This will be video number 2 in this series of conspiracies. The truth of conspiracies. This will be the goal or the motive for the accusation against people who are considered conspiracy theorists. Okay, and to briefly review here, the word conspiracy here is found 10 times in the Bible. And so if you're a Bible believer, here, conspiracy is found 10 times. If you're a Bible believer, you're going to recognize that, sure, there are going to be 2 or more people teaming up, getting together, maybe in private meetings, to commit a crime. Sure, that's just good old common sense. Here in Jeremiah 11, Jeremiah was warned by God, the Lord. So the Lord's a conspiracy theorist. A conspiracy theory is only a theory when you don't have all the outward evidences, and then eventually a lot of them, most of them, come true. And we are in the middle of several conspiracies right now in history, and we just might see a few of them come true here very shortly or manifested. Here, Jeremiah was warned by the Lord about a conspiracy among the men of Judah. Okay, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Here, Ezekiel was warned about it, and in this one, you'll see it's involved prophets, priests, princes. Okay, so when the prophets, where an apostasy is among the prophet, it leads to apathy amongst the priests, which leads to anarchy amongst the princes. And then here it is, the prophets again. And of course, they're divining lies and so forth and so on. So that's Ezekiel. Now here in the New Testament, we have it occurring one time in Acts 23:13. And this is 40, more than 40. They conspired to kill Paul. So that follows the proper definition. 2 or more people desiring, teaming up to commit a crime. Okay, now here's a technique that's often created by the true conspirators. The actual conspirators will try to hide their conspiracies by blaming someone else, usually the conspiracy theorist, of a conspiracy. In this one will be good old Amos. Amos was a good old country boy. I mean, he's just a good old country boy. He was a southern boy. And the Lord said, I want you to go up north to Israel and prophesy against them. And I'm sure Amos probably said, I've never been more north of the Mason-Dixon line. The Lord said, oh, it's just going to be short. Just go on up there. And so Amaziah, the fake priest of Bethel, okay, and Jeroboam, remember him, the king of Israel, where the kingdom split, and he took to 10 northern, and Rehoboam took to 2 southern. So these 2 and all his political advisors were conspiring against the people in order to try to keep them up north in Israel so they wouldn't go down to Jerusalem. So they created a fake Bethel, a fake Jewish temple or synagogue or whatever, even though they didn't have synagogues back then. And Amos obviously spoke against it. And so these 2, the real conspirators, accused Amos of conspiring, causing fear in people that they wouldn't associate with Amos. And people of the day said, oh, Amos, that conspiracy theory, he's against our beloved King Jeroboam. And it most likely worked. But you see, this old good old country boy, Amos, this didn't stop him. Okay, where he said, Jeroboam shall die by the sword. Israel shall surely be led away captive out of her own land. And then Amaziah said to Amos, O thou seer, and this is a slam here. You know, you're archaic, out of date seer, King James guy. And then he said to him, flee away into the land of Judah. Go on back down south. That's where you're from. And then eat bread and prophesy there. Go on to some street corner. You can't have free speech here in this public area. Get out of here. And then he said, prophesy not again anymore at Bethel, for it's a king's chapel. Oh, they got incorporation status there for the Bethel up there. It's a king's court. Oh, the government took over it. And then Amos just came back. He didn't back down. He's just a good old country boy. He said, I was no prophet, neither was I prophet's son, but I was a herdman and gatherer of sycamore fruit. And the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said to me, go prophesy to my people Israel. So then he did. And then look what he said. He said, thou sayest, prophesy not against Israel, drop not thy word against the house of Isaac. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, thy wife shall be an harlot in the city, and thy sons and daughters shall fall by the sword, and thy land shall be divided by line, and thou shalt die in a polluted land, and Israel shall surely go into captivity forth of its land. I mean, this good old boy, he didn't back down. Now let's go back to chapter 3 and see what this here feller's up to. Notice here, he was, I'm sure people said to him, don't talk about politics, don't talk about politics. And here's what he did. He published in the palaces at Ashdod and the palaces of the land of Egypt. And then he said, for they know not to do right, the politicians who store up violence and robbery in their palaces. Yes, violence and robbery. That's another term for that is taxation. They tax the people. I mean, he was definitely a tax protester, that's for sure. And so then chapter 5, he says here, I mean, this guy, what a sense of humor. It says, thus saith the Lord on the house of it, seek ye me and ye shall live. Okay, seek God. That's good advice. But don't go to Bethel. Seek not Bethel, nor Gilgal. Neither pass through Beersheba. Don't go to those guys are a bunch of liars. Don't go to them. Seek the Creator of the stars. That's what they said. And then he said here, they hate him that rebuketh in a gate. That's where the political decisions are made. That's where the judicial decisions are made. And they abhor him that speak uprightly. So he stood outside of their courthouse, basically, and blasted the biggest thieves in your county. Who are the biggest thieves in your county? The kid, robbing a convenience store? No, they're in the courthouse. That's the ones. The biggest liars, the crooks are in the courthouse. And here he says, for I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just. They take a bribe. Oh, yeah. They turn aside the poor in the gate from their right. They talk about rights, but then they don't give the poor any rights in the courtroom. I mean, have you ever experienced that? I have. And I've stood outside our courtroom as the judge go by holding my scripture sign, and I'm not held in contempt of judge outside. So he got to hear the gospel message or a little bit of truth. And so, I mean, that's good old Amos. I mean, what a character. In Amos, let's see what I got. I got chapter 5, verse 26. I want to run down there, see what that's got to say. Oh no, poor Amos. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Molech in Sheun. Your image is the star of your God. There's the so-called Star of David, where it's actually the Star of Molech. And I do believe in one of the emails of Hillary, she mentioned about sacrificing a chicken to Molech. And that there Molech, that owl god, you might find him in the Bohemian Grove. But I think that was sold out. I think that was sold years ago. But even at that, this here Amos, he was the real conspirators. These two dudes threw the charge back on Amos, and that creates fear in the people. And so most everybody at that time would say Amos is just a conspiracy theorist. Now here I mentioned last time that in the first video, William Casey, Ronald Reagan, CIA, Central Intelligence Director. In 1981, he said, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Yeah. That's what he said. And I would dare say pre-William Casey, some deceptive things of what most Americans believe is false is about the Civil War. The sinking of the Lusitania to get us in World War I, the creation of the Fed in 1913, Pearl Harbor, which got us into World War II, FDR and his male to female wife, transgendered wife, Admiral Byrd, Operation Paperclip. Have you ever looked at that, my friend? Or the creation of NASA, or the Antarctic Treaty in 1959. I mean, a lot of things we've been told. This is pre-William Casey, and I'm sure that general spirit was, was around there. And I mean, you could look up Operation Fishbowl, Operation Dominic. How about the JFK assassination? That's a big one. Oh, the JFK, man, that one is still probably one of the top 5 conspiracies, and all that stuff. Or how about the puppet MLK, Michael King? That's his real name. That's his real name on his birth certificate. He's never called Martin, never changed his name. Martin Luther King. No, it was Michael King. That's what his daddy did. He wanted his church people to call him Michael King. And his assassination. Or LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and his probably male to female wife. Lyndon J. removal of the United States notes, and then, right after, the first thing he did after JFK was assassinated, he removed the United States notes out of circulation and took several certificates. And then we got, good old honest Richard Nixon and the 6 moon landings. I mean, what do we believe about that? Was William Casey a prophet? I mean, all those things were pre-William Casey. What about post-William Casey? How about the multiple false flags, massive shootings? What about Ruby Ridge? Anything about that, my friend? Or Waco, where John Reno, also known as Janet Reno, where there's no Janet Reno in his or her, high school yearbook. I mean, it looks like we have another male to female candidate there. And then the OKC bombing, where there were 2 explosions, a few minutes apart. And then some more after the post-quote of William Casey, the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster. Do you remember that? Boy, I remember that vividly. And 9/11, I'm sure most of us remember that. And how about the most recent one, the COVID? The COVID scamdemic or pandemic. Oh, I hope the conspiracy of the tech and YouTube don't, censor my free speech opportunity. But just to rehearse a little bit, this CIA document here, Central Intelligence Agent document, here we go. And of course, they said this is a term that strikes fear and anxiety. Oh boy, they are absolutely correct on that. Oh, they are correct on that. And this is a ploy to prevent people from, in their public psyche to actually think through things. And it's a way of hiding some clandestine programs. And don't question. Boy, is that working? I would dare say that's working pretty good. I mean, if we just look up the word intelligence, in the Bible itself, as far as that goes, it's only found, look at there, 1 time, intelligence. 1 time is it found in the scriptures, and I have it here in the reference Bible, the Bible Analyzer, Daniel chapter 11. This is the only occurrence of the word intelligence, but we need to look. There it is. We look, and I put a footnote right there, and there's the footnote. And if we look at the context of this right here in Daniel, we'll see somebody's estate. That's weird. Then we'll see something here, a covenant, and he gets in his kingdoms by flattery, and he's going to take away the Jewish sacrifices, and it's called the end here, the time of the end. And the indignation, God's indignation, is accomplished, where at the time of the end. And so this, the force, here we go, the force be with you, the God of forces, the force be with you. And he doesn't desire women, so maybe he's, a shifty AC/DC dude. I'm not sure what he is, but he's got a strange God. This is in the context here, is in the context of the Antichrist. You see here, his heart shall be against the holy covenant. He shall do exploits. And oh wow, what's going on with this only occurrence of the word intelligence? The purpose of the truth is, intelligence is not national security. No, that's not its purpose. It's to keep secret the unlawful actions of conspiracies. That's really what it is. I probably could have put that then. And here's some of the conspiracies, and they want to shut down the nonconformists, people who actually tries to keep researching these things. Oh boy, isn't that something to think about. So I want to take a little gander here at something else, and there's this conspiracies as far as their mind control and mind manipulation of people. Now we all have been victims of some sort of mind control programming. We've all been. Now some is, extreme. Oh man, they're extreme. Not some, but multitudes of children and people have experienced extreme trauma-based mind control. And this is called MK Ultra. And some of this came about as a result of the Nazi scientists, where they, did a little research and figured out how they can control people and everything. And this was first really tried to be made more understandable by the Nazi scientists in the concentration camps. And what did America do? Did they charge them with war crimes? Well, many of these scientists under Operation Paperclip were transferred to America. And this programming has been continued here. And then sometimes you might see, an entertainment individual, you have a monarch butterfly, and that's pretty much shows, again, the same thing. In World War II, the Japanese scientists did some really extreme experiments against their Chinese captors. It's called the Rape of Nanking, or Nanjing, however they would pronounce it. I have no idea. But a lot of much of that information, again, was purchased by officials in U.S. governing structures. And many of these victims are usually exterminated. But there's a testimony of few of these survivors, and they have gone unheeded due to the effect of the CIA document. And the testimony of whistleblowers are often buried and challenged into fear. And this is how it's done. So this here, Ellen, PhD, she wrote a little bit about this idea and trauma-based mind control program. And we've all been victims of this in some way through the media industry, through terrorism and everything. And so it here is when it's really extreme, like certain individuals. It can be defined as systematic torture that blocks a victim's capacity for conscious processing. And so this is how they do it. All these things. Now look at that. Oxygen. Do you want to know the reason for the mask? There you go. Oxygen deprivation. And then you have all these techniques, extreme, wicked techniques. And what this does is induces a dissociative identities that force the victim to do, feel, think, or perceive things for the purposes of the programmer. Often some, the actor in chief that we have, you'll see that, someone beside him or some doctor might be the handler. I'm not sure, but it's just kind of strange. So I'm just trying to explain how some of this is done. Me personally, I was sheltered. Oh, I had a blessed upbringing, sheltered on a farm. But the Lord, for some reason, has allowed people that have experienced these things cross my path. And and the Lord wants me to minister to some of these folks that have had these terrible things happen to them. And so this is the one of the pages of what this lady's done. And here's another one. It's been installed below the level of, it has been consciousness. Okay, and so this is multiple personality disorder is something that comes about of it. Mind control is total slavery. These entities are programmed. The mind-controlled victims are modern-day slave masters who view and treat the victims as their own possessions. Okay, and then we have this one here. Here's the third one. This is where probably the vast majority of us have been influenced. Okay, it's been widely spread across the world. Yeah. Many of the typical candidates are politicians. Yes, that's right. Government leaders or, puppets, I guess you could say. Sometimes in the military. Okay, and then how is this, and sometimes, many times it's used with children, and here, catch this word, trafficking, and catch this word, trafficking. We might come back to that. Okay, and then these victims have special traits, military, like Timothy McVeigh and things like that. And so these are some of the things. And notice entertainment industry performers. Yes. Used to influence the media. Okay, look at that, media. How about let's stretch that to medium, as in a medium controlling your mind, as in programming. Yeah, how about that? Television programs. Now, isn't that something to think about? Are we being played here? I would dare say that the Lord has given us thoughts and wisdom on some of these things. Okay, so let's give you a few examples. Maybe you're old enough, like me, that remembers the JFK assassination. I was almost 6 years old. It occurred about 5 days before my 6-year-old birthday. And I, faintly remember the JFK assassination, but that's one of those conspiracies that, man, top 5, maybe even top 3, that, oh, you're not to question it. Now, his son, JFK Jr., I would dare say, began to question it, and then he published a magazine called George. Yes, in this magazine called George, was he telling us who was the instigator of his father's assassination? George who? George of the Jungle? No, George of the Jungle wasn't there. Could have been George Bush. He was in the CIA at that time. And possibly, they say we'll never know because JFK died in a plane crash. Well, maybe he faked that death. I don't know. Maybe he did. That's kind of an idea to think about. Maybe he faked that death, and maybe he's going to show up again. You don't know. That would be a conspiracy theory at this point. It might become fact. We'll have to wait and see. The moon landing. Oh, now how this one works, it wasn't a trauma situation like the JFK assassination. The moon landing would have been a spectacular event. Oh, what an amazing achievement of man and his advancement of technology, that he could land on a speeding light. Yes, and he could amazingly. 6 times they did that, and we're not to question that spectacular event. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh no, we are not to question that amazing technology where they went up 6 times during the administration of Mr. Honest Richard Nixon, that fine gentleman. And we're not to question, that though. They forgot to bring a camera to take a picture of the moon. I'll give you an example of what I mean by how we've all been affected and how the trauma actually gets into our psyche. Are you old enough to remember the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster? Okay, that's when the rocket went up and then exploded. Well, I remember that, and I remember the exact location when I was told that, and that's part of this programming. I was at a farmer's house, farmer's property, during the meal, where we took a break from shelling popcorn. And it was such, a tragic event, and the media talked about, oh, the tragic event and everything. And at maybe just for me saying that, you say, well, of course it was a tragic event. Well, as time marches on, you begin to question things, and supposedly there were 7 people in that rocket as it went up and then traveled horizontal. In the curve of its horizontal traveling, it exploded. But of those 7 astronauts, I would say that a good private investigator could find 5 of them still alive. 2 of them, amazingly, were identical twins, because this is something that was used to influence our thinking. Do you remember when 9/11 occurred? I mean, do you remember where you were located when you heard about it? I can remember specifically a friend called me and said, have you seen what happened in New York? And I said, never heard about anything. You didn't have a television. And I was standing in my dining room right by my table. I mean, isn't that something that you remember the exact location? But some folks have done investigation on that, and of course 9/11 has been used for most of the government intrusion since then. And you're not to question the 9/11 narrative, not questioning it at all. I mean, if a person just read the 9/11 Commission report, you're going to find a bunch of anomalies and a bunch of contradictions and strange things. This here individual decided to look at the evidence. She didn't want to delve into the conspiracies, stating an inside job. And just from this picture, you can see that amazingly, those buildings just turned to dust. And so she did research on this, and you can find this online. This is the advertisement on Amazon for this, and it talks about Ground Zero, and the popular chant, 911 was an inside job. Okay, but then she said, what makes that different from the 19 bad guys with box cutters did it? And of those 19, 15 of them, according to the narrative, were Saudi Arabians. Some of them were found alive after this, a few of them. And if they were Saudis, then why didn't Bush go after Saudi Arabia? Why Iraq? I don't think one of the 19 were Iraqis. There's just a lot of things that you ought to be able to question, but when you bring it up, you're going to be charged with, oh, you're one of those, a conspiracy theorist. Oh, I see. And you can't even question the narrative. And here's where the media gets involved. This is a BBC report. And this here media party is announcing live, the 47-story Solomon Brothers building number 7, close to the World Trade Center, has also collapsed. Wasn't hit by a plane. But funny thing is here, looky there, right there. That is building 7. 47-story Solomon Brothers building, and it hadn't collapsed. She got a little bit ahead of herself, the news report, and there it is right there. I mean, this is just a tip of the iceberg in some of these thoughts, these ideas that a person might have. Now here's the practicality of what I've been giving you about, at least being open to investigate everything. Doesn't the Bible say we are to prove all things and hold fast that which is good? Doesn't the Bible say in 1 John 4, 1 and 2 that we are to try the spirits? The evidence that these mind control techniques are working is when a person says, oh, Hoffman, he's a conspiracy theorist. It's not. Hoffman is a Bible believer who proves all things and holds fast to that which is good. That's what the attitude should be. But we've all been affected by this, including myself. And sometimes it will be a short-lived, but sometimes it will last a lifetime, this control. And it's trauma-based on fear. Now, what I find interesting is in Ezekiel 28, okay, so we have the word terror, and George Jr. is the one that made terrorism a popular word. In Ezekiel 28, virtually any Bible teacher that teaches on demonology will go to Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28. And they virtually all agree that the king of Tyrus, who was in Eden, the garden of God, who was made perfect, okay, is Lucifer. Okay, so pretty much all will agree to that. But then they seem to overlook merchandise, okay, which his kingdoms will offer that to people to deceive them. He will get a lot of that through violence. He's called the covering cherub. Okay, and here it mentioned about a multitude of his iniquities and the iniquity of thy traffic, drug traffic, liquor traffic, human trafficking. Yes. And then here's how he controls people. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. Thou shalt be a terror. How does Lucifer control the thoughts of people? Through terror. Through terror. Doesn't it say in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. And then Peter gives a fair warning, an admonition to the righteous of the tribulation time period, because this will be the techniques that will be used to manipulate the thoughts of people. In 1 Peter 3:14, he said, but if ye suffer for righteousness' sake, happy are ye. And then he says, be not afraid of their terror, neither be troubled, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts. Be ready always to give an answer to every man that asks you a reason of the hope that's in you, that is in meekness and fear. So you have hope in Jesus Christ. And the scriptures helps us to prove all things and hold fast that which is good. The Lord said this also when he answered the questions here. He said, you'll hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. Be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. The New World Order is going to happen, my friend, but it's all part of God's plan. And the Lord doesn't want us to be troubled. That's what he desires. How far is he encouraging these righteous of the tribulation time period to have their extreme faith in the Lord. Psalm 27, if you look at the Bible doctrinally, you'll come up with some different ideas. The psalmist of David, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? Governing authorities? The news industry? Allow the industry to... A flu virus that 99% of people recover from? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And then this writer, when the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, come upon me to eat up my flesh. Now, Saul wasn't chasing David to eat up his flesh, to eat him. No, not Saul. But this is jumping into doctrine. They stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me. So a whole army goes after me. A whole Muslim force goes after me. To eat up my flesh, my heart shall not fear. Though war shall rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. That's an encouragement to the righteous of the tribulation. Now here's where we can get it actually more practical, in our present situation. Okay, did the COVID narrative scare you? Well, yeah, maybe at first it was problematic, but about 4 weeks into it, you begin to question things. Now, here's what the CDC, Disease Control, CDC, these great health conscious people. This is what they said about COVID-19, age group, there, infection, fatality. Looky there, 99.998. That's more pure than the NIV. There you go. And at this age, there you go, 99.95. And did you hurriedly go get your vaccine? And maybe the booster, and maybe this, and maybe that. Okay, here's my age at the time, 99.4%. Oh, did I hurriedly go get, dutifully get mine? Not on your life did I do that. The likelihood of me traveling from one side of a bridge to the other is 99.998% chance of getting to the other side. Do you think I'm going to park the car, swim across the river to get to the other side? Are you kidding me? I mean, why would we take the advice of somebody like Fauci and Bill Gates? Why would people take the advice? It's because they got caught up in the fear. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. I would say Bill Gates is ungodly, and I would say Fauci is ungodly. But in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, Paul said, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Prove all things. Is that limited to Bible? Like in Acts 17:11, where they searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so? Or was this, okay, that news industry party there, that, person is saying, we need to go get the shot. Should I? Or should I prove all things? Or should I deprive my thoughts, my oxygen, and be a part of the mind control situation? You see, this is how far-reaching this idea is that I just gave you. Okay, if you receive a bill from a business corporation in your community, okay, any business corporation, maybe, you got medication from a place, maybe it's a hardware store, but you received a bill from this corporation then, and you weren't even in that building, you weren't in the business, and you've never bought it, and you haven't bought anything from them recently, would you challenge the bill? Well, of course you would. Of course you would. Now, if you receive a bill from a corporation that appears to be governmental, It's got the government insignia on there. You know, a property tax bill. Okay, will you just dutifully accept that without question? I'm sure most of us will, but would you question it? And I've questioned it. Why don't you question it? Have you ever seen the standard interpretation of Romans 13, where the King James Bible says, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers? So obviously this gives a hierarchy. This doesn't teach blind obedience to any government authority. But here's the standard interpretation. Subject to governing authorities. Daniel didn't do that. Subject to submit to governing authorities. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah didn't do that. English Standard, governing authorities. The midwives of Israel or Egypt didn't do that. Submit himself to governing authorities. Paul didn't do that on occasion. I say it all these on occasion when they had no right to. Okay, the King James Bible writes it differently. But in the mind of many people, like the New King Jimmy, subject to governing authorities. That's kind of strange. Why do they do that? It's because of the fear. The New American Standard Bible, subject to governing authorities. Mordecai disobeyed the governing authorities. And Esther, we have a whole book about Esther and Mordecai disobeying a certain selective command of the law, the governing authorities. New American Standard, governing authorities. You know, there's a staunch King James Bible defender, wonderful man, staunch on the King James issue. When we read his commentaries, he will blast the apostate interpretations. But when it gets to Romans 13, when he read this and commented on this, you know what he wrote in his commentary? He wrote that right there, governing authorities. Why did he do that? I know why. Fear. Fear influenced his thinking, caused him to do something contrary to what normally he would have done. If we go back to the COVID narrative, did you notice that the media just couldn't wait? They were chomping at the bit to record all the deaths of COVID-19. I mean, a person could have been run over by a semi and they still died from COVID-19. Oh, the fear mongering. Oh, it was just rampant. But now, have you investigated the narrative of the multiple deaths of athletes passing out on a soccer field and a football field, and young people who are getting blood clotting and heart problems, and the blood clotting that morticians have never seen before in the bodies when they bring them in to the funeral home? And one of the first things many hospitals are doing now to people coming in is giving them a blood thinner. Could it be, by chance, could it be a vaccine injury? Oh no, that's a conspiracy. You can't question that narrative. If you foolishly, out of fear, took the jab, are you experiencing some health complications that you didn't have before? We would encourage you to question the narrative. Question the narrative. The blood clotting. You see, this CIA document and the scriptures in Amos chapter 7 show us the conspirators will throw the conspiracy theory accusation back in the face in order to control the narrative. Christians and Bible believers need to follow the admonition of Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5. 21. Prove all things. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good.